Good morning from Pastor Jonathan here at the Robertsdale UMC Sanctuary, wishing you a happy Veterans Day. If any of you are watching and have served any branch of our armed forces, we want to say thank you today. We appreciate you today. We honor and remember you today. If you are a family or have a loved one who is a veteran, we also want to thank you because we know that when one person serves, it impacts all of those in the household, all of those in the family. And so I know many of you are remembering a loved veteran today. Some of you are grieving the loss of a veteran that you love today. And I pray that as you hold them in your heart, God will hold you in his arms. I am here on this Wednesday after our charge conference. Our district superintendent, Jean Tippett, was with us last night and led our church conference right here in the sanctuary. And she spoke from that podium about a topic that I want to share with you because it was just one of the most moving charge conference devotionals I have ever experienced. Several of us, it made us tear up as she gave us vocabulary for this year. She said the word that she's been traveling with this year is the word messy. That the messiness of 2020 has really been so apparent for everyone, but that also that's part of the gospel, that God comes into the messiness of our lives, and that's where he does his greatest transforming work. She shared thoughts from a book by Michael Yaconelli entitled Messy Spirituality. And one of the things that he says in that book is that messiness is the workshop of authentic spirituality. It's the greenhouse of faith, the place where the real Jesus meets the real us. I'm going to share that again. This is Mike Yaconelli writing in his book, Messy Spirituality, that messiness is the workshop of authentic spirituality, the greenhouse of faith, the place where the real Jesus meets the real us. I think many of us, when we experience church as a messy place, think that something's wrong. We think that when people come to church, we should be meeting the pure and the holy, right? The forgiven, the renewed, the clean, because we have been washed in the blood of the Lamb. And so we should experience nothing but joy and pleasantries in the community of the saints. And it doesn't take us long until we experience that that's just not reality. Life is messy, and we have been reminded over and over in this year of 2020 that we live in a world of pandemics, we live in a world of storms, we live in a world where our economy has to respond to unexpected devastations that this year has brought. We live in a world where relationships are messy, and to be able to speak and be heard and to understand and extend compassion is difficult work, and it's messy work. We have to put on our gloves, and we have to roll up our sleeves, and we have to choose to engage this world not as we would have it, but as it is, because that's exactly what Jesus did. Last Lent, this past spring, when we were worshiping exclusively online from mid-March leading up to Easter, we did a whole sermon series called Encountering Jesus. We started it before the COVID epidemic shut us down for in-person worship, but we continued it online. And if you go back and look at those videos or recall those sermons, you remember that we walked through the Gospel of John looking at particular encounters that Jesus had with individuals in the Gospel. And the amazing thing as I reflect on it today is that just as we talked at Charge Conference last night about the messiness that Jesus entered, every one of these encounters was a messy encounter. You remember Nicodemus, the Pharisee? The situation with Jesus and what he was coming to teach was so messy that Nicodemus wouldn't even meet him in public. He came at night to ask questions of this peculiar rabbi. Jesus encountered a Samaritan woman at a well in the middle of the day. That was a very messy story. You can read about that in John 4. Jesus encountered a paralyzed man by the pool of Bethesda. And that was a messy story. It was a messy situation that led to follow-up messy conversations that Jesus had, that the man by the pool had with the religious leaders, that Jesus ended up having with the religious leaders. Then Jesus encountered an adulterous woman. Talk about messy. The leaders that brought her to Jesus wanted to stone her to death. He encountered a man born blind, and he encountered his friend Lazarus, who had died, and the messiness of the family that was gathered in the home of Mary and Martha and their brother Lazarus, grieving and weeping and wailing, to the point that when Jesus approached the tomb, he himself wept. All of these stories are about Jesus encountering us in the messiness of life. So I want to remind you of that today, and I want to invite you to think about the messiness that is causing you anxiety right now, to think about the messiness of situations that you cannot control, to think about the messiness that you're praying about how to respond, because you can do something, you can respond in some way, but to take heart in the fact that in all of it, God meets you right in the mess. We're approaching a season called Advent, which is the entire month leading up to Christmas. And one of the things that I am mindful of every year, and I know many of you, I'm teasing a little bit because we're not even to Thanksgiving yet, but this is a year where so many people are jumping the gun because everyone's just ready for the joy of the holidays. Everyone's ready for the nostalgia, a sense of stability and normalcy. And so people are playing the music early. People are putting up their trees early and decorating because it's a sign of light, and it's a sign of joy, and it's a sign of hope. And that season, to me, is a reminder that of all the ways God could have sent his anointed one into the world, he sent him to a man named Joseph and a teenage virgin girl named Mary that weren't people of highly esteemed social status. The situation resulted in family and societal scandal. They didn't have a place to stay the night that the Messiah was actually born. They barely made it to a place where she could give birth, and once she did, they were surrounded by animals and feeding troughs, and the baby Christ child himself was laid in a feeding trough, a manger. Talk about God entering the mess. From day one, this is how God chooses to enter the world. Isn't that a good God? Aren't you grateful that God's grace and mercy choose to enter right at the place of mess, and that it's in the messiness that God does his greatest transforming work? It's in the messiness that God does his redeeming work, his cleansing work, his work of making new. So I challenge you today to actually embrace the mess. Hold the mess before God. Ask God to come into the mess in the way that you need, and then put your trust in a God who does just that. I hope that this word encourages and blesses you today. I'm looking forward to gathering with you for Bible study tonight at 6 p.m. in person in our fellowship hall, or right here on our Facebook page or our website. As we continue through the Songs of Ascents, we got 2 more weeks. So tonight we'll be looking at Psalms 132 and 133, and then next week we'll finish up with Psalm 134. God bless you, grace and peace.